The Cathara throne room had been designed by someone who understood that architecture could be a weapon. Obsidian walls rose in sharp angles toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow, and the floor was polished to a mirror sheen that made every step feel precarious. Ambassador Marcus Way had been in this room 43 times over the past 6 months, and his body still tensed every time he entered. The Cathara liked their environments warm and their visitors uncomfortable, a combination that meant Marcus's formal jacket was currently stuck to his back with sweat, while he maintained the carefully neutral expression that was his only armor. Minister Cathron stood at the presentation podium, his voice carrying the particular monotone of someone who believed repetition strengthened arguments. He was tall even by Cathara standards, his elongated ears sweeping back from his skull in elegant points that currently angled downward in concentration. Those ears were fascinating and terrible, betraying every micro-expression, every shift in emotion. Marcus had spent months learning to read them, because the Cathara's faces were often masks, but their ears told the truth. The mineral extraction projections for the third quarter show a 0.7% increase over previous estimates, Cathron droned, pulling up holographic charts that everyone in the room had seen at least twice before. This necessitates reconsideration of the proposed allocation ratios in subsection 12, paragraph 4, clause. Queen Velshera sat motionless on her throne of volcanic glass, and Marcus recognized the signs. Her ears, normally sharp and attentive, had angled into a position that meant profound boredom. Her amber eyes, designed by evolution to track prey in near darkness, followed Cathron with the minimum attention required for politeness. One clawed hand rested on the throne's armrest, fingers tapping an irregular rhythm that Marcus had learned, meant she was approximately 30 seconds from doing something unpredictable. He stood with the human delegation in their designated area, trying to look engaged despite the fact that Cathron was now explaining a footnote to an appendix for the 5th time. Sarah Chen, his second-in-command, shifted her weight slightly, which in diplomatic terms was the equivalent of screaming, "I'm dying of boredom." James Park, their trade specialist, was carefully studying the ceiling like it held secrets about mineral rights instead of just more intimidating architecture. Marcus found his attention drifting to the Queen despite his best efforts at professional focus. 6 months of negotiations had given him plenty of time to observe Velshara, and he'd noticed things he probably shouldn't have. The way her ears would tilt forward when someone presented an idea she found genuinely interesting. The barely visible tension in her shoulders at the end of 8-hour sessions. The protective way she positioned herself when younger members of her court were being challenged by the more aggressive nobles. She was 2 meters of apex predator elegance, wrapped in ceremonial armor that looked like it could stop plasma rounds, and she led with an intelligence that made her more dangerous than any weapon. She was also, Marcus had reluctantly admitted to himself around month 3, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with diplomatic necessity, and everything to do with the fact that he apparently found tall alien women with sharp features and sharper minds extremely attractive. Which brings us to environmental impact assessment protocols in Zone 7, Cathron continued, oblivious to the fact that he'd lost his audience somewhere around the 3rd subsection. Velshara's fingers stopped tapping. Her ears rotated forward in a sudden, focused movement that made everyone in the room tense. Enough. Cathron stopped mid-word, his own ears flattening against his head in automatic submission. Your Majesty, You were merely repeating information this council has heard multiple times. We are negotiating in circles, Minister, and it is profoundly tedious. She stood in one fluid motion, and Marcus was reminded again that the Cathara had been apex predators before they'd been diplomats. I require entertainment. The throne room went very still. Marcus felt Sarah's hand brush his arm in warning. A bored Cathara queen was dangerous in ways that ranged from politically inconvenient to actively life-threatening. The court waited, Nobles and advisors frozen like prey animals, sensing a predator's attention sweeping over them. Velshara's eyes moved across the room, tracking over her own courtiers with visible disinterest before landing on the human delegation. Her ears tilted forward, focused and intent, and Marcus felt the weight of that attention like physical pressure. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her sharp features. Ambassador Wei. Her voice carried easily through the vast space, and Marcus noticed how everyone's ears rotated toward him. You have been negotiating with us for 6 of your months. You have been unfailingly professional, meticulously prepared, and persistently reasonable. It has been quite dull. Marcus inclined his head in acknowledgement, his mind already running through possible responses and their likely consequences. This wasn't standard protocol, and everything about Velshara's posture suggested she was about to do something that would make his life significantly more complicated. Your Majesty honors me with her attention, even if she finds my professionalism dull. Oh, I did not say you were dull, Ambassador. I said your professionalism is dull. There is a meaningful distinction. She descended the steps from her throne, each movement precise and deliberate, in a way that made Marcus very aware that she could probably cross the distance between them in under 3 seconds if she wanted to. Tell me, do all humans maintain such rigid control, or is this particular talent unique to you? Control is part of my function, Your Majesty. I serve at the pleasure of my government. How very diplomatic. She was moving closer now, the court parting before her like water around stone. Marcus forced himself to hold his ground as she approached, stopping about 3 meters away, close enough that he could see the intricate scarification patterns on her armor, ritual marks that told the story of her ascension. But you are not functioning now, Ambassador. You are simply standing in my throne room, sweating through your formal clothing, and pretending this heat does not cause you significant discomfort. Where is the control in that? Laughter rippled through the Cathara court, not entirely unkind but definitely entertained. Marcus felt his delegation's tension spike beside him, but he kept his expression neutral and his voice steady. I admit Your Majesty's preferred temperature takes adjustment, but discomfort is temporary. Successful negotiations have lasting value. A practiced answer. You have so many of those prepared, do you not? Her ears tilted in an angle he'd learned to recognize as genuine curiosity. I wonder what unpracticed answers you might give if I asked the right questions. This was definitely moving beyond standard diplomatic interaction. Marcus's training was screaming warnings about maintaining appropriate distance, but something about the way Velshara was watching him suggested this wasn't entirely malicious. It felt like genuine interest, possibly the first genuine interest she'd shown in any of these interminable council sessions. Your Majesty is welcome to ask whatever questions she wishes. I cannot guarantee my answers will be more entertaining, but I will endeavor to be honest. Honest? She repeated the word like she was testing its weight. How refreshingly novel. Very well, Ambassador Wei. I have a question, and I want your honest answer, not your diplomatic response. I will do my best, Your Majesty. Velshara's mouth curved into something that revealed slightly too many sharp teeth to be comfortable. Tell me, who do you humans find attractive? What do you consider sexy? The throne room went absolutely silent. Marcus heard someone in his delegation make a strangled sound that might have been horror or the beginning of a diplomatic incident. The Cathara court was watching with the focused intensity usually reserved for blood sports or succession challenges. Every ear in the room was pointed directly at him. This was a trap, obviously a trap. Ask the human about attraction in front of the entire court. Watch him stumble over cultural differences and inappropriate responses. Prove him weak or crude or simply out of his depth. It was clever. The smart move was to deflect, make a joke about cultural relativism, turn it back on her with a question about Cathara standards. He'd practiced deflection techniques for situations exactly like this. But Marcus had spent 6 months in this throne room. 6 months watching Velshara navigate treacherous political waters while maintaining absolute composure. 6 months noticing the way her ears would angle when she was genuinely interested versus when she was being polite. 6 months observing her protect the vulnerable members of her court from the more aggressive nobles. 6 months seeing the exhaustion she carefully hid at the end of marathon sessions. 6 months of thinking thoughts that were absolutely inappropriate for a diplomat to think about an alien head of state. And he was tired. Tired of the careful dance. Tired of measured responses. Tired of pretending he hadn't spent the last 3 months acutely aware of every time she entered a room. Her ears were angled forward now, fully focused on him, and there was something in the tilt of them that suggested this wasn't entirely a game. She was curious, genuinely curious, and maybe a little uncertain about what answer she wanted to hear. Marcus made a decision that was either extraordinarily brave or catastrophically stupid. Beauty is subjective among humans, Your Majesty. Different cultures and individuals find different qualities attractive. He paused, met her amber eyes directly, and continued with absolute steady honesty. But if you are asking me personally, I find you beautiful. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Velshara's ears snapped back against her head in a motion he'd never seen from her, an expression of pure shock. Her amber eyes went wide, pupils dilating to nearly full black. Around them, the Cathara court was frozen, every being staring at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to scandalized horror to something that might have been fascinated amusement. His delegation was going to kill him, if he survived long enough for that to be an option. You, Velshara started, her voice coming out rough and uncertain in a way it never had before. You find me beautiful. Yes, Your Majesty. You are not joking. No, Your Majesty. That you are not attempting to flatter me for negotiating advantage. I was asked for honesty, Your Majesty. That is what I am providing. She stared at him, and Marcus watched her mind working behind those eyes, trying to process an answer she clearly had not expected. Her hand moved unconsciously to touch one of the ritual scars on her armor, a gesture he'd never seen her make, something vulnerable and uncertain that didn't match the legendary composure of the Cathara queen. This is, she stopped, tried again. Ambassador Wei, you will accompany me, immediately. She turned and strode toward a side entrance with movements that were controlled, but somehow off balance. The court remained frozen, watching Marcus like he was walking toward his execution. Minister Cathron's mouth was actually hanging open, his ears flat against his head in shock. Your Majesty, Cathron managed. The council is dismissed. Ambassador Wei will follow me. Everyone else will remain exactly where they stand. She didn't look back, simply disappeared through the doorway. Marcus glanced at his delegation. Sarah looked like she was trying to decide whether to tackle him or start writing his obituary. James had gone pale, but there was nothing to do except follow, so Marcus walked toward the doorway, feeling every eye in the throne room tracking his movement. The corridor beyond was cooler and empty of witnesses. Velshara was 20 meters ahead, moving fast, and Marcus had to jog slightly to catch up. She led him through a series of passages he'd never seen, moving deeper into the palace's private sections, her ears still flat against her head in that expression of emotional overwhelm. Finally, she stopped at a door that opened to her touch, revealing a chamber that was clearly personal quarters, simpler than he'd expected, with minimal furniture and wide windows overlooking the capital city below. She turned to face him, and in the softer light, Marcus could see that her ears were trembling slightly, her composure cracking. Explain yourself. Your Majesty asked a question. I answered honestly. You cannot possibly find me attractive. We are different species. Your aesthetic standards, human preferences, I do not. She was struggling with words in a way that would have been unthinkable in the throne room. You must be mocking me. I am not mocking you, Your Majesty. Then you are attempting manipulation, some human strategy I do not understand. No strategy, Your Majesty, just honesty. Her hand pressed against the window, claws making a soft clicking sound against the glass. Do you have any concept of what you have done? You just told the Queen of the Cathara Empire, in front of her entire court, that you find her beautiful. You have created a diplomatic incident of unprecedented magnitude. I apologize for the setting, Your Majesty, but not for the truth. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with something that might have been anger or confusion or fear. Why? Why would you say such a thing? Because you asked for honesty. That is not sufficient explanation. Marcus took a breath, committed now to the path he'd chosen. Because I have spent 6 months watching you lead with intelligence and principle. Because I have seen you protect the younger members of your court when the military advisors try to intimidate them. Because you choose justice over convenient solutions. Because when you think no one is watching, I have seen exhaustion and loneliness. And someone carrying the weight of impossible expectations with grace that makes my chest ache. He stopped, aware he was saying too much but unable to stop. Because all of that is beautiful, Your Majesty, every part of it. Velshara's ears had flattened completely against her head, and her pupils were dilated so wide her eyes looked almost black. Her hand came up, and for a moment Marcus thought she might actually strike him. Instead, she pressed her palm against her chest, over where he assumed her heart was located, and made a sound that might have been pain or surprise. No one, she said, her voice shaking, has ever called me beautiful before. Powerful, yes. Dangerous. Desirable in the way one desires a weapon or a political alliance. But beautiful. She turned back to the window. You have just complicated everything, Ambassador Wei. Do you understand that? I am beginning to, Your Majesty. You cannot simply say such things and expect the universe to remain unchanged. My advisors will demand explanations. Your delegation will demand explanations. There will be political ramifications neither of us can predict. I understand. She was quiet for a long moment, her reflection in the window showing an expression Marcus couldn't quite interpret. What will you tell them when they demand to know what was said in this room? That Your Majesty wished to clarify certain aspects of the negotiation in private, that we discussed cultural differences in communication, that it was productive. He paused, and that I maintain my previous statement should anyone ask directly. She turned to look at him, and something that might have been a real smile crossed her face. You are either the bravest human I have met or the most foolish. My colleagues would almost certainly say foolish, Your Majesty. Then perhaps they do not know you as well as they believe. She moved toward the door, her composure beginning to reassemble itself like armor being put back in place. Return to your delegation, Ambassador Wei. We will resume negotiations tomorrow. An ambassador. Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you, her ears tilted forward just slightly. For your honesty, it was unexpected. Marcus bowed, deeper than protocol strictly required, and left her chambers. His hands were shaking as he walked back through the corridors, and his mind was racing through the implications of what he'd just done. He'd told an alien queen she was beautiful, and she'd thanked him for it. Whatever happened next, whatever political firestorm this triggered, one thing was absolutely certain. Nothing would ever be the same. The human delegation's quarters were designed for species that preferred cooler temperatures and found the Cathara aesthetic of sharp edges and dramatic shadows mildly disturbing. Marcus had barely crossed the threshold before Sarah Chen grabbed his arm and dragged him into the conference room, where the rest of the team waited with expressions ranging from panic to morbid fascination. What were you thinking? Sarah's voice was carefully controlled, which meant she was about 3 seconds from actual shouting. You told the Cathara queen she was beautiful, in front of her entire court, during official negotiations. She asked a direct question. I gave an honest answer. Marcus loosened his collar, grateful for the cooler air that didn't feel like it was actively trying to suffocate him. She asked what humans find sexy, and you pointed at her like you were ordering lunch. James Park looked like he was reconsidering every life choice that had brought him to this moment. We're supposed to be negotiating mineral rights, not whatever that was. I said beautiful, not sexy. There's a distinction. A distinction that will be completely lost when we're all recalled to Earth for creating a diplomatic disaster. Sarah pulled up a holographic display already showing urgent messages from their superiors. Command wants an explanation. The diplomatic corps wants to know if you've had some kind of mental breakdown. And Ambassador Chen from the Trade Mission wants to know if we're aware that public declarations of attraction in Cathara culture carry significant political implications. Marcus set down his water, his hands finally steady. What kind of implications? I'm still researching, but preliminary reports suggest that among Cathara nobility, publicly acknowledging cross-species attraction has historically preceded either formal alliance proposals or assassination attempts. Occasionally both. Sarah collapsed into a chair, rubbing her temples. So you've either started a courtship ritual or signed your own death warrant, possibly simultaneously. She didn't kill me. No, she dragged you to her private chambers alone, which is somehow more concerning. Sarah pulled up another file, this one showing historical records. The last time a Cathara monarch met privately with a foreign ambassador without advisors present was 187 years ago. It ended with a war. That's reassuring. It's really not. Sarah leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. Marcus, talk to me. What happened in that room? Marcus considered how much to share. The vulnerability in Velshara's voice when she'd said no one had ever called her beautiful felt too private, too raw to expose to analysis. She wanted to understand whether I was mocking her or attempting some kind of political manipulation. And you told her what? The truth, that I meant what I said. James made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. You're actually going to maintain this position. You're genuinely going to stand by the statement that you find the alien predator queen attractive. Yes. Sarah and James exchanged a long look that communicated an entire conversation. Finally, Sarah sighed. Then we frame it as cultural bridge building. Personal rapport to facilitate negotiations, cross-species understanding. Command won't like it, but they'll work with it if you commit to the position. She stood, moving closer to Marcus. But I need to know, is this real? Are you actually attracted to her, or was this some strategic decision you made without briefing the rest of us? Marcus thought about Velshara's amber eyes, the way her ears had trembled when she'd admitted no one had seen her as beautiful, the crack in her composure that had revealed someone lonely and overwhelmed beneath the crown. It's real. Okay, Sarah took a breath, processing. Okay, then we adapt our strategy. But Marcus, you need to understand what you've started. The Cathara don't do anything casually, especially not their royalty. If she responds to this, if she acknowledges your interest publicly, there will be massive political implications for both our species. I know. Do you? Because I'm not sure you understand the scale. She pulled up another document. I've been reading everything available about Cathara courtship customs since you walked out of that throne room. It's elaborate, ritualistic, and deeply tied to political alliance structures. If the queen decides to pursue this connection. A chime interrupted her, the distinctive three-tone pattern indicating an official message from the Cathara palace. They all froze. Sarah opened it, and Marcus watched her eyes widen as she read. It's a summons for you, private audience with Queen Velshara, tomorrow morning before scheduled negotiations. She looked up at Marcus. No advisors, no translators, no witnesses, just you and her. The room went very quiet. That's either extraordinarily good or catastrophically bad, James finally said. I'm leaning toward catastrophically bad, Sarah muttered. Marcus, you can decline. Cite diplomatic protocol, request that all meetings include. I'm going. Of course you are. She closed the display with more force than necessary. Fine. Then we have 18 hours to prepare you for every possible scenario, starting with how to survive a private audience with someone who could literally tear you apart if she decides she's insulted. Those 18 hours passed in a blur of research, debate, and increasingly creative worst-case scenarios. Marcus learned that private royal audiences typically lasted no more than 20 minutes, that they were usually held in formal receiving rooms, not personal chambers. That declining one was technically possible, but considered a significant insult. That accepting meant acknowledging the Queen's authority to set all terms for the interaction. By the time Marcus arrived at the palace the next morning, he'd memorized protocols he hoped wouldn't be necessary, and prepared answers to questions he hoped she wouldn't ask. A young palace guard, amber eyes bright with barely concealed curiosity, led him through corridors he'd never seen, deeper into the royal wing than any human had gone before. They stopped at a door that was simpler than expected, almost austere. The guard touched a panel, announced him in Cathara, and stepped aside. The door opened. The room beyond wasn't the formal receiving chamber from Sarah's briefings. It was smaller, more intimate, with wide windows overlooking gardens Marcus hadn't known existed within the palace complex. Velshara stood by those windows, and for the first time since he'd met her, she wasn't wearing her ceremonial armor. She wore a simple robe in deep midnight blue, her silver hair unbound and falling past her shoulders in ways that made Marcus realize he'd never seen it loose before. Her elongated ears were in neutral position, angled slightly back, and without the armor she looked younger, less imposing but somehow more present. Ambassador Wei. She didn't turn from the window. Thank you for accepting my summons. Your Majesty honors me with the invitation. Does she? I am not certain. Finally she turned to face him, and Marcus saw tension in her shoulders, uncertainty in the way her ears tilted. Please sit. This will be easier if we are not standing on ceremony. There were low seats arranged near the windows, designed for Cathara proportions but manageable for humans. Marcus sat, and Velshara took the seat opposite, leaving space between them but not as much as formal protocol would demand. I did not sleep last night, she said abruptly. I spent hours reviewing recordings of yesterday's council session. I analyzed your facial expressions, your voice patterns, your body language. I searched for deception, for mockery, for hidden strategy. Did your Majesty find any? No, which is precisely what troubles me. Her ears tilted forward, focusing completely on him. You were sincere. When you said you find me beautiful, you meant it. Yes, your Majesty. Explain to me why. The words came out almost desperate. We are not the same species. Your people have your own standards of beauty, your own aesthetic preferences. I cannot possibly meet them. My features are too sharp by human standards, my proportions wrong, my eyes too large, my ears. She gestured at them with visible frustration. I am fundamentally other to you, alien. So why would you look at me and see beauty? Marcus took a moment to choose his words carefully. Your Majesty, may I speak plainly? I would prefer it to diplomatic evasions. Human beauty standards are arbitrary and culturally specific. They change across geography and time and social context, but they share certain commonalities: appreciation for harmony of form, intelligence of expression, strength of presence. You possess all of those qualities. He met her eyes directly. Your features aren't too sharp, they're elegant. Your proportions aren't wrong, they're powerful. Your eyes aren't too large, they're expressive. And your ears, he smiled slightly. Your ears are perhaps the most honest thing about you. They show every emotion, every shift in attention. You cannot hide with them, and that honesty is beautiful. Velshara's ears had been rotating forward as he spoke, and now they were fully focused on him, trembling slightly. You pay attention to my ears. I pay attention to all of you, your Majesty. It's my job to read diplomatic counterparts, but with you, it stopped being just professional observation months ago. When? The question came out soft, almost vulnerable. There was a moment 3 months into negotiations. One of your military advisors was pushing for aggressive territorial expansion, arguing that might makes right. You could have agreed. The military supports you strongly, and it would have been politically convenient. Instead, you said that power without principle is just violence, and violence is not a foundation for lasting peace. Marcus held her gaze. Your conviction was absolute, and I thought that any leader who believes that, who leads from that principle despite pressure otherwise, is someone worth admiring. Admiration is not attraction. No, but it's where attraction began for me. Everything after, watching you navigate court politics, seeing how you protect people weaker than yourself, noticing the way you close your eyes for just a moment when exhaustion hits but you can't show weakness. It all built on that foundation. She was very still, her ears flat against her head in that expression of emotional overwhelm. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. No one sees these things. No one is supposed to see them. A queen does not show weakness. I'm sorry if I've overstepped, Your Majesty. You have not apologized for the right thing. She stood abruptly, moving to the window, her back to him. You should apologize for being sincere, for meaning what you said, for making me feel things I have no right to feel and do not know how to process. Marcus stood as well, though he kept his distance. What things, Your Majesty? Hope, curiosity. The terrifying possibility that someone might see me as more than a political entity. She pressed her palm against the glass. Do you understand what your honesty has done? My advisors spent the entire night debating your statement. Some believe it was human manipulation. Others believe you were mocking me. Still others think I should be insulted by the presumption. 3 suggested I should have you expelled from the planet. 2 suggested I should explore the political advantages of your interest. Her ears tilted back, flattening further. 1 asked me what I feel. The youngest one, the advisor you mentioned I protected. He asked if perhaps I should stop analyzing your statement and simply ask myself what I want. And what do you want, Your Majesty? She turned from the window, and her eyes were bright with something that looked like tears, though Marcus didn't know if Cathara cried the same way humans did. I want to understand why you would look at me and see beauty when I have been told my entire life that I am valuable for my strength, my intelligence, my political acumen, but never for simply existing as I am. I want to know if this is real or if I am being foolish. I want, her voice cracked, I want to not be lonely anymore, even if that is inappropriate for a queen to admit. Marcus moved closer slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. May I ask you something, Your Majesty? You have already asked many things. What is one more? Has anyone ever called you beautiful before? Not as political flattery, not as fear-driven compliance, but as simple truth from someone who sees you clearly. Her ears flattened completely against her head. No. Then perhaps Your Majesty deserves to hear that truth, even if it complicates things. Perhaps Your Majesty has spent too long being valued for what you provide, and not enough time being seen for who you are. Velshara crossed the remaining distance between them in 2 swift strides, and suddenly she was directly in front of him, looking down from her greater height with eyes that held too much emotion. You are making this impossible. You understand that. You walk into my life, you answer a question I asked to relieve boredom with devastating honesty, and now I cannot stop thinking about what it means that you see me when everyone else simply sees my crown. I see both, Your Majesty. The crown is part of you, but it's not all of you. My advisors will oppose any connection between us. Your government will attempt to use this for political leverage. We will be scrutinized and questioned and pressured from every direction. I know, and you still maintain your statement. You still find me beautiful. Marcus met her amber eyes, those impossible eyes that were watching him with fear and hope, and something that might have been the beginning of trust. Yes, Your Majesty, without reservation or regret. Velshara's ears rotated fully forward, and slowly, carefully, she smiled. Not the political smile she showed her court, but something genuine and fragile and uncertain. Then we are both fools, Ambassador Way. Because despite every logical reason not to, I find that I care very much what you think of me. And I want to know what other truths you might tell me if I continue asking questions. I'm happy to provide as many truths as your Majesty wishes. Then start with this. She moved even closer, close enough that he could feel the subtle coolness of her body, could see the fine patterns in her silver hair. Is this attraction you speak of? Is it simply aesthetic appreciation? Or is it something more? Marcus's heart hammered. It's more, Your Majesty, significantly more. How much more? Enough that watching you in council sessions has become a distraction. Enough that I've had to remind myself repeatedly that you're a head of state and I'm a diplomat, and there are approximately 700 reasons why these feelings are inappropriate. Enough that standing here now, having this conversation, feels simultaneously terrifying and like the most right thing I've done in months. Her hand came up, hesitated, then very carefully touched his face. Her clawed fingers were surprisingly gentle, cool against his skin. This is forbidden by practicality if not by law. You understand that. You are human, I am Cathara. Your lifespan is a fraction of mine. The political complications alone would occupy teams of advisors for years. I know all of that, Your Majesty. And yet you stand here telling me you feel more than aesthetic appreciation. Yes. She studied his face for a long moment, her touch remaining gentle against his cheek. I do not know what to do with this, with you, with these feelings that I have been attempting to suppress since you spoke that truth in my throne room. What feelings, Your Majesty? Interest, curiosity, the desire to hear you speak more truths because your honesty feels like water in a desert. And underneath all of that, she stopped, her ears trembling. Attraction. Genuine, terrifying, inappropriate attraction to a human who sees me when I have been invisible to my own people for years. You're not invisible to me, Your Majesty. No, that is the problem. She withdrew her hand, stepping back, and Marcus saw her composure reassembling itself with visible effort. Return to your delegation, Ambassador Way. We will resume formal negotiations this afternoon. But I want you to understand something. Yes, Your Majesty. This conversation changes things between us. I cannot pretend it did not happen. I cannot unsee the way you look at me or unhear the truths you have spoken. We will need to navigate this carefully with full awareness of the complications. Her ears tilted forward, gentle and uncertain. But I am not ready to stop exploring what this might be. Are you? No, Your Majesty. I'm not ready to stop either. Good. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Ambassador. Tonight there is a state dinner. You will be expected to attend. Seat yourself where protocol demands, make appropriate conversation with your table companions, be the professional diplomat you are supposed to be. Of course, Your Majesty. But know that I will be watching you, and wondering what other truths you might tell me, given the opportunity. Her ears tilted forward, and this time her smile held warmth that made his breath catch. I find that I am very interested in your truths, Marcus Way. The use of his given name felt intimate, forbidden, perfect. I have many truths to share if Velshara wishes to hear them. Her eyes widened slightly at his use of her name, then she laughed, soft and genuine. You are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both, Your Majesty. Then we are well matched in our foolishness. She gestured toward the door. Go, before my advisors arrive and find us here together, looking at each other the way we are looking at each other. Marcus left, his mind spinning and his heart racing. As he walked back through the corridors toward his quarters, he replayed every word, every look, every moment of her touch against his face. Whatever came next, whatever political complications this created, one thing was clear. Something had begun yesterday in that throne room, and this morning it had become real. Fragile and complicated and possibly doomed, but real. And Marcus found he wouldn't trade that reality for any amount of diplomatic safety. The state dinner was held in a hall designed to showcase Cathara architectural grandeur, while making every non-Cathara species slightly uncomfortable. Crystalline chandeliers cast light that was just slightly too blue. Tables were set at heights that worked for Cathara proportions but made humans feel like children. And the temperature was maintained at a level that had Marcus sweating through his formal jacket within 15 minutes. He sat with the human delegation at their assigned table, 3 positions and 30 meters removed from where Velshara held court at the high table. From his angle he could see her in profile, perfectly composed in new ceremonial armor that seemed to capture and refract light like living crystal. Her ears remained in carefully neutral position throughout the meal, revealing nothing, and her interactions with the nobles around her were measured and appropriate. Marcus had attended 7 of these formal dinners over the past 6 months. They followed rigid protocol, opening toasts, prescribed courses served in specific order, conversation topics that stayed safely within acceptable bounds. He'd learned to eat slowly, accept small portions of foods that ranged from interesting to actively hostile to human digestion, and maintain appropriate diplomatic composure at all times. Tonight felt different. He was hyper-aware of Velshara's presence, of the way she occasionally glanced in his direction when she thought no one was watching, of the subtle shift in her posture when Minister Cathron leaned in to whisper something. Around him, his delegation was working overtime to project normalcy, as if yesterday's throne room incident had never occurred. "You're staring again," Sarah murmured from his left. She'd been positioned next to him deliberately, serving as both support and emergency intervention if needed. "I'm observing diplomatic proceedings. You're watching her like she's the only person in a room with 200 guests, representing 17 different species. It's noticeable." Sarah took a careful sip of something purple that claimed to be wine. "Minister Cathron has been glaring at you for the past 20 minutes, by the way." Marcus shifted his attention to the high table. Cathron sat 2 positions from the queen, his elongated ears angled directly toward Marcus, his expression suggesting he was mentally composing a very detailed list of grievances. "He's been glaring at me since we arrived 6 months ago. This is just more focused glaring. Because you told his queen she was beautiful in front of everyone. In case you'd forgotten why the glaring has intensified." "I haven't forgotten." "Good, because I need you to remain aware of exactly how precarious our situation is." Sarah set down her glass, her voice dropping even lower. "I spent today in back-channel communications with various Cathara diplomatic contacts. Opinion is divided on how to interpret your statement. Roughly half believe you're attempting some form of psychological manipulation. The other half believe you've genuinely developed feelings for their monarch, which they find either fascinating or horrifying depending on their political faction. What do you think?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I think you meant what you said. I think she knows you meant it. And I think this is either going to transform human-Cathara relations or destroy them, possibly both simultaneously." Before Marcus could respond, a chime rang through the hall, the signal for formal toasts. All conversation ceased as Velshara rose from her seat, her movements fluid and commanding. She lifted her ceremonial cup, and every eye in the hall turned to her. "Honored guests, we gather tonight to celebrate the continuing dialogue between our peoples." Her voice carried easily through the vast space. 6 months ago, the human delegation arrived with proposals for cooperation in disputed territories. Some among my advisors, her gaze flicked briefly to Cathron, suggested that negotiation was unnecessary, that the Cathara Empire's strength alone should determine outcomes. Cathron's ears flattened against his head, and several other military advisors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "But strength without wisdom is tyranny," Velshara continued. "And tyranny creates enemies where we might discover allies. Ambassador Wei and his delegation have demonstrated patience, creativity, and willingness to seek solutions that benefit both species. This is the foundation of lasting peace. Not conquest but cooperation, not domination but dialogue. She raised her cup higher. To dialogue, to cooperation, to the courage required to speak truth even when truth is uncomfortable. The assembly echoed the toast, voices blending in multiple languages and communication styles. But Marcus felt the weight of her emphasis on courage to speak truth. Understood this toast was as much about yesterday's throne room as it was about negotiations, and saw several Cathara nobles glancing between him and their queen with new understanding. As the dinner progressed through multiple courses, Marcus noticed a pattern developing. Cathara nobles would approach the high table, speak briefly with Velshara, then glance in his direction before returning to their seats. Some looked curious, others hostile, a few amused. The attention was building like pressure before a storm, and Marcus understood something was coming. It came during the dessert course, when a young Cathara noble approached the human delegation's table. Marcus stood, aware that every eye in the hall was now fixed on him. "May I ask you a question in return, Veltharin?" "You may. Do you believe in soul recognition?" The concept in Cathara philosophy that sometimes one being can perceive another's essential nature, beneath rank and armor and social role. Veltharin's ears tilted uncertainly. This is traditional teaching, yes. But it is philosophy, not common practice in modern times. What if it were practice? What if I told you that over 6 months of negotiations, I have watched your queen navigate impossible political pressures with intelligence and principle? That I have seen her protect those weaker in her court, choose justice over convenient victory, carry the weight of an empire with grace that leaves me in awe. Marcus was speaking to Veltharin but looking at Velshara now, her amber eyes locked on his. What if I told you that when she asked me who I found attractive, I answered honestly because lying would have dishonored both of us? That truth required me to say she is beautiful, not despite being Cathara, but because she is wholly and completely herself. The silence was absolute. Veltharin's ears had rotated back, flattening in something like wonder or fear. At the high table, Cathron was on his feet, clearly preparing to object, but Velshara raised her hand in a gesture that froze him in place. "That would be soul recognition," Marcus continued, his voice carrying through the hall. "Not manipulation, not mockery, just one being seeing another's essential nature and having the courage to speak that truth aloud." Veltharin stood frozen for a long moment. Then slowly, deliberately, he placed his fist over his heart in the Cathara gesture of respect for profound truth. "You honor our queen, Ambassador Wei, and you honor our traditions by understanding them deeply." He turned to his companions, speaking rapidly in Cathara, then looked back at Marcus. "House Cathvar supports continued dialogue with humanity. We believe soul recognition when genuine should be honored, not questioned." He returned to his seat, and gradually conversation resumed, but the energy in the hall had shifted dramatically. Marcus sat down, aware his hands were shaking, aware that Sarah was staring at him with an expression somewhere between horror and reluctant admiration. "You just invoked one of their most sacred philosophical concepts," she said quietly. "In front of everyone, claiming soul recognition with their queen." I answered his question honestly. "You did more than that. You just declared something that in Cathara culture is considered either divinely ordained or complete delusion. There's no middle ground." She glanced at the high table where Velshara sat very still, her ears tilted forward and trembling visibly. "And I think you just made her speechless for the second time in 2 days." The dinner continued through several more courses, but Marcus barely tasted anything. He felt Velshara's attention on him like a physical weight, felt the shift in the room as his response spread through whispered conversations. Some nobles were looking at him with new respect, others with increased hostility, but the dismissive amusement from before had largely disappeared. When the dinner finally concluded and guests began dispersing toward various reception rooms, Marcus was gathering himself to leave when a palace attendant appeared at his elbow. Ambassador Wei, Her Majesty requests your presence in the East Garden, immediately. Sarah grabbed his arm. Marcus, it's fine. How can you possibly know that? Because she wouldn't summon me publicly if she intended something harmful. This is her response to my response. The East Garden was accessible only through the royal wing, a carefully cultivated space where native Cathara plants glowed softly in the evening darkness. Velshara stood by a fountain, still wearing her ceremonial armor but with her formal crown removed. Her silver hair caught the bioluminescent light, and her ears were relaxed, angled slightly back in neutral position. She turned as he approached, and he couldn't quite read her expression. You made quite a statement tonight, Ambassador. Your Majesty asked for honesty. I provided it. You declared soul recognition in front of my entire court, in a manner that will be analyzed and repeated for months. Her ears tilted forward. Do you understand what you have done? I defended a truth. You claimed that we are fundamentally compatible, that you perceive my essential nature and find it beautiful, that any connection between us is, she paused, searching for words, inevitable, cosmically ordained. Do you comprehend how significant that is in my culture? Marcus moved closer, keeping his movements careful. I'm beginning to understand. Beginning to understand. He says this so casually, but something that might have been a smile played at her lips. Marcus, you have just told my entire court that you recognize my soul. Half of them now believe we are meant by the universe itself to be connected. The other half believe you are either delusional or dangerously manipulative. There is no neutral ground. Which do you believe, Velshara? I believe, she stopped, her ears flattening briefly before rotating forward again. I believe you have made it impossible for me to ignore what I feel. I believe you see me more clearly than anyone in my court has ever attempted. I believe that, when I heard you speak tonight, defending your truth with such conviction, something in me responded like it was recognizing home. Is that good or bad? It is terrifying. It is also wonderful. It is completely impractical and against every sensible consideration. She closed the remaining distance between them until they were nearly touching. And when you look at me the way you are looking at me right now, none of those considerations seem to matter as much as they should. Marcus raised his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. When she didn't, he touched her face, his fingers gentle against the sharp planes of her features. Is this allowed? Nothing about this is allowed by convention. That is what makes it real. Her hand came up to cover his, pressing it more firmly against her face. Soul recognition, if genuine, supersedes political consideration. It is rare enough that tradition allows for exploration when it occurs, even across species. So we explore. We do, carefully, with full awareness that my advisors will object, your government will attempt leverage, and we will face scrutiny from all directions. Her other hand moved to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat through his formal jacket. Your heart races. You're touching me while telling me we have cultural permission to explore this connection. Of course my heart races. She smiled then, genuine and warm. I like that you are nervous. It means this matters to you. It matters more than is probably wise. Then we are matched in our foolishness. She stepped back, her professional composure reassembling with visible effort. We should return before my absence becomes notable. But Marcus... Yes, Velshara. The use of her given name still felt intimate, forbidden, perfect. Tomorrow evening there is a garden reception. Traditionally, the queen walks the garden paths with various nobles and allies, having informal conversations. You will be invited, and if I accept, then we will walk together where my court can observe but not overhear, and we will continue this exploration, carefully and honestly. Her ears tilted forward, almost playful. I want to know what other truths you might tell me if we have time alone. I have many truths to share if Velshara wishes to hear them. I do, more than I have wished for anything in a very long time. They returned separately, maintaining discretion. But as Marcus walked back to his quarters, He carried the echo of her touch, the warmth in her voice when she'd used his name, the promise of tomorrow's garden paths. Something had begun in that throne room, grown in her private chambers, and tonight had been declared publicly. Fragile and complicated and possibly doomed, but undeniably real. And Marcus wouldn't trade it for anything. The garden reception began at dusk when the bioluminescent plants native to the Cathara homeworld started their evening glow. Marcus arrived with the human delegation, wearing formal attire that Sarah had selected through a process involving 3 wardrobe changes and considerable debate about sending appropriate messages. The gardens were spectacular, winding paths through landscapes that blended cultivation with wilderness, everything designed to showcase Cathara ecological beauty. Velshara moved through her court like water flowing around stones, stopping to speak with various nobles, her ears angled in polite attention as she listened to concerns and petitions. Marcus watched from diplomatic distance, aware of the other humans spreading through the garden, networking and building relationships that supported formal negotiations. He'd been at the reception perhaps 30 minutes when a palace attendant appeared. "Ambassador Wei, Her Majesty requests your company on the Eastern Path." Sarah shot him a look that clearly communicated be careful, but Marcus simply nodded and followed the attendant through winding trails deeper into the gardens. The Eastern Path led away from the main reception area, curving around massive trees whose trunks glowed with soft purple light. Velshara waited where the path curved, wearing formal robes instead of armor, her silver hair bound in intricate patterns that exposed her ears completely. Those ears rotated toward him as he approached, and he realized this was the first time he'd seen her looking genuinely relaxed. "Ambassador Wei," she said formally, but her eyes held warmth. "Will you walk with me?" "It would be my honor, Your Majesty." They walked in silence initially, the path taking them farther from the reception's noise. Behind them, Marcus knew guards would be following at discreet distance. Protocol demanded the Queen never be truly alone, but the illusion of privacy existed. "You are not wearing armor," Marcus finally said. "I wanted you to see me without it, at least metaphorically." Her ears tilted uncertainly. "I thought perhaps it was time to stop hiding behind defenses." "I appreciate that. Though for the record, you're impressive either way." "Impressive is not the same as beautiful. You're both. Beautiful is who you are, impressive is what you've accomplished. They coexist." They reached a clearing overlooking the capital city below, lights sparkling like captured stars. Velshara stopped, looking out over her city, her expression complicated. "I have ruled for 20 years by your calendar. Taken the throne young and unprepared, every decision scrutinized, every weakness exploited, every vulnerability a potential weapon for those who would see me fail. You haven't failed." "No, but I have been so careful not to. So controlled, so perfectly what a Cathara queen should be." She turned to look at him. "Until you walked into that throne room and refused to treat me like a threat to be managed." "You're not a threat. You're a person who happens to be a queen. Most cannot separate those things. Most aren't paying attention." She smiled and it transformed her face. That is what I mean. You say such things so easily, like seeing me as a person is the most natural thing possible. It is natural. The hard part is remembering to also see you as the queen. Is it truly difficult? Sometimes. When you smile like that, when your ears tilt forward because you're happy, in those moments the crown feels like an afterthought. Marcus moved closer. "Is that inappropriate?" "Probably, but I find I no longer care about appropriate." She reached out, her clawed fingers gentle against his face. "Yesterday when you spoke about soul recognition, do you know what I felt?" "Tell me." "Relief. Pure overwhelming relief that you had named what I have been feeling but could not articulate. That there was tradition and framework for what is happening between us, that I was not simply being foolish." "You're not foolish. I am terrified, which is similar." Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. "I keep waiting for you to realize who I am, what I am, to understand this cannot work." "Why can't it work?" I am Cathara, you are human. Our lifespans alone, I will live 3 centuries, you perhaps 80 years. The mathematics are cruel. I know the mathematics, Velshara. I've done the calculations repeatedly, and I've decided they matter less than the present moment. How can you say that so calmly? Because the alternative is not knowing you at all, not having this, and that seems infinitely worse than any future complications. Her hand dropped from his face, and she turned back to the city. My advisors believe I am being manipulated, that your feelings are strategy designed to secure favorable negotiation terms. Are they? No. The word came out absolute final, but I must ask directly anyway. I must hear you say it plainly. Are you using me, Marcus Way? He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. No, what I feel has nothing to do with negotiations or politics. It has everything to do with watching you navigate impossible situations with grace, seeing you protect the vulnerable, hearing you choose principle over convenience. It has to do with the way your ears tilt when you're interested, the way you close your eyes briefly when exhaustion hits, the way you smiled just now like you'd forgotten how. And if I believe you, if I accept this is real, then we determine what comes next, together. She was quiet, then turned to face him fully. I have never done this before. Cathara courtship is formal, political, arranged between houses for strategic advantage. What we are attempting, exploration based on soul recognition, it happens but rarely, never between species in my lifetime. Then we improvise, carefully, honestly, respecting complications. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's worth attempting. Velshara's expression opened into something vulnerable and hopeful and scared. If we pursue this, there will be opposition. Not just political concern, but genuine hostility from those who believe species should not mix. You will face prejudice and danger. I've already faced some. It will intensify significantly. I know, and you still want this. Marcus took her hands carefully, mindful of her claws. Velshara, yesterday you asked if I truly found you beautiful. Tonight I'm asking you, do you want this? Not what advisors think you should want, not what's politically convenient, but what you actually want. Her ears were fully forward, trembling, her eyes bright. I want to be seen, to be known by someone who chose to see me, not from obligation but because they wanted to. I want to hear what other truths you might tell. I want, her voice cracked. I want to not be lonely anymore, even if it is complicated and frightening and possibly doomed. Then we try. We navigate politics together and see where this leads. You are very certain. About you, absolutely. About logistics, not at all, but I'm willing to discover answers if you are. She pulled him closer, and they stood breathing the same air while city lights sparkled below. Then slowly, carefully, she touched her forehead to his, a gesture Marcus had learned was profoundly intimate among her people. I am willing, she whispered, terrified but willing. They stood like that until reception sounds drifted closer, then reluctantly separated. Velshara's composure reassembled itself, but something in her eyes had settled. We should return, separately for discretion. Of course. But Marcus, tomorrow after the High Council session concludes, I will send formal invitation. Dinner private in my quarters. Will you accept? His heart raced. Yes. Good, because I want to know everything. Your childhood, your path to diplomacy, what you dream about, what frightens you, what makes you laugh. I want to know Marcus, not just Ambassador Way. I want to know Shara too. Not Queen Velshara, but simply Shara. Her ears tilted forward sharply. No one has called me just Shara since childhood. Should I not? No, call me Shara. When we are alone, being honest with each other, call me Shara. She smiled radiantly. I like how you say it. They returned separately. When Marcus emerged into the main garden, his delegation clustered near refreshments, watching him with expressions ranging from curious to concerned. Well, Sarah asked quietly. She invited me to dinner tomorrow, private dinner in her quarters. James made a choking sound. That's basically a declaration of intent in Cathara culture. Private dinners are reserved for family or potential. He stopped, staring at Marcus. You're courting the Cathara queen. We're courting each other. This is insane, Sarah muttered, but she was smiling. Completely insane. Command will lose their minds. The diplomatic corps will have collective apoplexy. And yet she looked at him carefully. You're happy, genuinely happy for the first time since I've known you. I am, terrified but happy. Good. You'll need that happiness for what comes next. The next day's council session approved the mining agreement with minimal opposition. When it concluded, a palace attendant delivered a formal scroll, the dinner invitation, given publicly so the entire court witnessed. That evening Marcus found himself in Velshara's private quarters. They were simpler than expected, comfortable furniture, books, windows overlooking the city. No throne, no ceremonial trappings. Shara emerged wearing simple clothing in deep blue, her hair unbound, ears relaxed. Marcus, thank you for coming. They ate and talked, conversation flowing naturally. She told him about her childhood, the pressure of royal birth, the assassination that had thrust her onto the throne too young. He told her about growing up in Chicago, his mother's disappointment when he'd chosen diplomacy over medicine, his first assignment where he discovered his talent for seeing beyond cultural differences. You see people, Shara said, ears fully focused. That is your gift, not categories but individuals. Is that why you like me? I like you because you looked at me in that throne room and saw someone worth calling beautiful. Because you defended that truth publicly when deflection would have been easier. Because you are sitting here now looking at me like I am the most interesting thing in the universe. You are. She stood, moving around the table. Her hand touched his face gently. I want to kiss you. Is that allowed in human courtship? Marcus's heart hammered. Very much allowed. Good. She bent down and kissed him carefully, gently, learning. Her lips were cooler than human, softer than expected, and when Marcus's hand came up to touch her hair, she made a soft sound of surprise or pleasure. When they broke apart, her ears trembled and her pupils were dilated. That was, yes, I want to do that again. Please do. This time the kiss was less careful, more certain. Marcus stood, eliminating height difference, and Shara's arms wrapped around him carefully. When they separated, she touched her forehead to his. I am falling for you, Marcus way, rapidly, terrifyingly, completely. Is that wise? Probably not. I'm falling too, if that helps. It does. She pulled back, expression turning serious. But we must discuss reality. My advisors are drafting proposals for formalizing this connection. Some suggest ceremonial alliance. Others suggest I should not formalize at all, keep you as, she stopped, uncomfortable. As what? As someone I see privately but do not acknowledge publicly. It would be easier politically. Would you want that? No. If I choose you completely. But it will be complicated, Marcus. There will be those who refuse to accept you. Your government will pressure you for leverage. We will face scrutiny and prejudice. Do you believe we're making a mistake? I believe we are making a choice. Whether it is a mistake, she smiled uncertainly. I suppose we discover that together. Then let's discover it, carefully, honestly, with all complications. But together. Shara's ears tilted fully forward and she pulled him close, face against his shoulder. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but you're worth the complexity. When Marcus finally left past midnight, Shara walked him to the door, hand in his, reluctant to let go. Tomorrow the negotiations conclude formally. There will be a signing ceremony. After that, she paused. After that I will make an announcement about us, public and official. Is that acceptable? More than acceptable. You are certain there is no returning from this. Marcus kissed her once more, gentle and certain. I'm certain. About you, about us, about choosing complexity over safety. Let's do this. Her smile was radiant. Then tomorrow we face the universe together. The signing ceremony was held in the throne room where everything had begun. Marcus stood with his delegation as Velshara signed the treaty with formal ceremony. When his turn came, He noticed Shara watching, ears tilted forward, and something passed between them that transcended territorial agreements. After formal signing, Shara stood. Before we conclude, I have an announcement concerning diplomatic relations. The room went silent. Over these months, I have come to respect the human delegation's integrity. But more than that, I have come to respect one human in particular. She looked directly at Marcus. Ambassador Marcus Way has demonstrated qualities my people value: honesty, courage, ability to see beyond surface differences to recognize connection. In accordance with our traditions regarding soul recognition, I am formally acknowledging a personal connection with Ambassador Way. This relationship will be pursued openly, representing not political alliance but personal choice to explore mutual regard across species. The murmur through the court was immediate and intense. Cathron looked stricken. Young Veltherin was grinning. Reactions ranged across every spectrum. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. She actually did it. Public acknowledgement, unprecedented. I know. You better be ready for what comes next. I am. Shara was watching him across the room, and despite chaos of reactions and political calculations, Marcus saw only her. She'd chosen this. Chosen him. Chosen to face complications publicly and with conviction. He placed his hand over his heart in the Cathara gesture of respect for profound truth, and across the room Shara's ears tilted forward in response, her expression softening into something private and warm despite the public setting. Whatever came next, political pressure, cultural scrutiny, challenges of navigating love across species, they would face it together. A human who saw beyond categories and a Cathara queen who'd found someone brave enough to truly see her. In that throne room where everything had begun, a new chapter started. Not just for them but for two species learning that connection didn't require sameness, only